Okay. Um, Decided to start creating this video basically to express some thoughts of things I'm dealing with. A fair warning that even though the topics discussed are, safe for work, essentially, um, I might be discussing some rather depressing topics. Um, Nothing too severe, but fair warning if you're an overly sensitive person, um, that it might, yeah. I usually focus on trying to do more fun content, so I usually don't do videos like this. This is very non-typical for how I usually do content. So basically, I've been struggling more and more each day with dealing with some challenges in life. So kind of give the background. Um, I'm married. I have two kids that you know I love my family dearly. Try to do my best for them. Provide um, home safety and work to provide an income. Several years back, my wife, um, after delivering our second child, had some major complications that honestly almost led to her passing away. Um, we actually only made it through that when her doctor, well, first when a nurse noticed that something was wrong, and then when her primary doctor actually took a deeper look. Long story short, she had some severe issues start occurring afterwards. She's admittedly always had some form of medical complications. There was an issue that hit her in her late teens that always left her some level of crippled, but nothing like overly severe. Nothing that completely messed up her quality of life, but it was kind of like a little bit of an impairment, shall we say? Something that made things a little more difficult. Well, after the delivery of our second child, she ran into some new symptoms that made life much more difficult than usual. Um, Basically, the main one being chronic pain, but a lot of other conditions that, kind of added challenges to that. Nausea, several other things. The most problematic part about this is when we've noticed those conditions, we've been taking her to see a doctor to try to find what was causing these, because we knew it was something that, like, even that early on, it was severely debilitating her. Her quality of life was shot. And going on 6 years, almost 6 years, because um, this is something that was cropping up just before COVID. Um, we've gone through multiple doctors. We've seen her so we've seen her family doctor first. Start the process there. Her gynecologist, and like 3 different specialists. We're still on third specialist, but honestly, see I don't see a path for a diagnosis for whatever is causing this at this point. And so I'm still left with that massive unknown that we have a condition that honestly has such severe pain that almost no pain medicines completely control it. You can be on several pain medications and still be in just excruciating pain. All best that it gets her, even with some of the strongest medicines, even with some of the strongest pain medicines, is taking some of the edge off the pain. Initially, I was able to ease some of the burdens by being able to work from home. My job, since I was a pretty decent technical level, pretty decent expertise level at my job, and since they had the resources for it, I was able to work from home pretty frequently, even before COVID hit. So, kind of funny. I was one of those that, even though COVID required us to all work from home, it ended up just making more common something that was already happening, something that my life had already slipped into. And initially, things were decent. I was getting my work done, but then slowly things started to get worse over time. Her conditions kept, like her pains and other related parts of her symptoms and condition just kept getting worse. Now, she's one that's typically been a very independent person. She's always one of those that wants to travel, wants to do things outside the house. She absolutely hates being cooped up in the house. And honestly, it's one of those things where I can see that when she is able to get outside the house, she's able to kind of stabilize her mind a bit, not go crazy. But as the years have gone on, her symptoms have gotten worse and worse to the point that she needs my help with even the smallest tasks. Things like, picking up something that's fallen onto the ground, getting her clothes ready, getting her socks defuzzed. Simple clarification on that: she can't handle even a little bit of pilling or fuzzing that happens on the inside of socks, and so requires me to kind of shave off the insides a bit so it's not bugging her feet. Getting her meals, helping with showers, getting her stuff out to the van if she needs to go somewhere, taking the kids to their therapies, and taking them to and from school. And the wild thing about the meals part is she was one of those that was very good at making her own meals. Like, she knew typically what she wanted, very skilled at how to make it, and heck, even had decent enough recipes that I could kind of do some of it, but not nearly as well as her. And it's funny I say not nearly as well as her, because there's so many mistakes that I've made getting things for her preparing meals, that sort of thing, where I can tell she's frustrated because I haven't done what she needed well enough. I haven't set up everything to her specifications. So things have slowly gotten more challenging. And once COVID ended, and once they started, various different job places started requiring people to come back to the office, including mine. Yeah, initially it was something I was able to get covered by FMLA because we had extenuating circumstances, what with her being unable to care for herself properly. But biggest challenge is without that diagnosis, there's not much, specific like conditions that can be referenced for what she's going through. She hasn't been able to hold a job for years, like ever since before that second pregnancy. Her pain and other issues were so bad that she wasn't able to do any work. And even before she wasn't able to continue working, we did have some challenges with lots of debts that had occurred, which a lot of it which have stuck around for a long time and which still persist. And without a diagnosis, there really hasn't been anything to supplement that. Actually, he tried to apply for Social Security disability benefits a while back, when the conditions were in full swing. I believe that was partway through COVID, in fact. But she wasn't able to get a approval on that because without a condition to work off of, the criteria are a lot harsher. I believe in her case required like someone that could vouch for her symptoms, what she's going through, what limitations prevent her from working. But it wouldn't allow for a family member to vouch for that. And since we only have family members in the household, we're basically out of luck on that front. Midway partway through COVID, I did, and just to preface this, I was already starting to hit mental health issues just prior to COVID, but slowly getting worse during COVID. Admittedly, I probably didn't have things nearly as bad as she did during COVID because with her not being able to have anything on her face without causing massive breakouts, she was more or less restricted from going anywhere outside the house. I didn't have that issue. I'm not the biggest fan of masks, I feel stifled, but I could at least still shop for the things we needed and that sort of thing. But with all of the extra help that he needed and that the kids needed, because both my kids are high needs, they're on the autism spectrum, it was slowly starting to eat away at my mental health. Um, Ironically, part way through that, I think it was around late 2021. I ended up basically joining the furry fandom around that point after coming across some streams on YouTube. Funny thing about that is it slowly segued into me streaming, but when I started to figure out the good qualities that I had that weren't that apparent before. I'd always been a very reserved person most of my life. I usually wasn't, as goofy and wild as, I'm sometimes seen on streams. And just the laughter that brought out, it's kind of what got me into streaming. It also helped me clear up some of the mental challenges I was having. Because just prior to that, I was starting to run into such bad depression that I wasn't enjoying video games anymore. One of my hobbies that I've enjoyed for the longest time, standard go-to de-stress option. And even that was not working to reduce the stress anymore. Something about meeting all the people I have started to help a lot with reducing stress. It helped me realize I'm not quite the hermit, not quite the social hermit, I should say, that I've typically made myself out to be. I didn't have very many friends for most of my life, especially after grade school. And I realized I was more, not just capable of making friends, but also more in need of it, shall we say. And for the most part, things have gone pretty well on that, but I slowly noticed some cracks in how my personality is. Because I basically have two sub-personalities that are directly clashing with each other. Of course, I said I'm a reserved person, but I also have that goofy side to me, and a part that is a little more sociable. Those somewhat clash, but what's worse is I have social anxiety where it's hard for me to go to people when, well, just in general. Like, if it's friends, it's easier. If it's new people, I have a hard time, starting off conversing. I basically overthink literally everything about starting a conversation. More importantly, I have a hard time, beginning conversation, like adding to an existing conversation, partly because my triggers for, getting interested in a conversation are so limited that it almost becomes a chore for my brain, for lack of a better term. Which is kind of sad considering that I do genuinely enjoy having conversations when I'm able to get them rolling. When things just fall into place. The reason I bring conversations and socializing is, over the last approximately a year, give or take, uh, things have slowly degraded in my mind as far as social relations, to the point where anytime I have, you know, the smallest amount of tiredness, smallest amount of sadness, depression, it becomes even more challenging to, you know, be with friends. And it's really strange because it's not like I don't want to be around people. In fact, in those moments, I understand more than ever that I kind of need to be around people to bring my brain down off of a ledge, to make it so that my brain stops destroying itself and can embrace calm. And another wild challenge about this, like a lot of what I know I've needed is some form of mental therapy, but things in my life are so challenging, so overburdened, that so much is mentioning the idea of, just having myself go to therapy, trying to schedule it. Tried to work with my wife to actually get it scheduled, and basically had things lined up, had work benefit that would have covered it without any cost issues, but things are so messed up for my wife that she can't even work with me on getting therapy for myself scheduled. And even if I could schedule it, we would have run into a situation where, while I'm getting the therapy, even if I'm able to do it over phone or video or whatever, I'd still run into that issue of how would her and the family be taken care of. She can't even do anything for the kids. All she can be is a kind of a warm body around the house, make sure they're fine, or someone that can direct them to anything they need, but you know, not not physically. And I didn't kind of what led to me even creating this video, because I've kind of thought about it on and off several times, but one thing I didn't realize, like, I didn't fully comprehend just how rough things were for her until we were trying to make things work out for me to go into the office at least a little bit, like a few days each week. Actually, I had it planned out for it to happen recently, but when the days rolled around, she didn't even need me to stay at home because of some additional help she needed. The next day rolls around, and rather 2 days after that, she ends up needing to go to uh, an appointment, but also because of that, I'd have to help the kids as well as help her get ready, as well as help her get when she gets back. Because even though she can drive for a little bit, the pains and other symptoms build up so quickly that she's not able to do anything else for a long time. So I have that added stress of wondering, am I going to be able to keep my job if they're going to require me to go in the office? Luckily, I'm working with my manager and stuff to try to figure that out. Try and see if I can get an exemption, but the worry still hits me so hard that I literally get nauseous. I literally start to develop some level of anxiety to the point where, it starts to get close to an anxiety attack. No, certain. I'm not certain how to handle all of this. Like so many areas where something needs to be resolved and there's nothing. Obviously the work issue, going to the office, that part's still in the pipeline, still being figured out. But, I have my mental health struggling. I'm not able to schedule therapy. Frankly, she needs some therapy also because I'm sure she's doing far worse mentally than I am with, her just being stuck at home when she really doesn't want to be. Like I said, she's an independent person, wants to be out doing things, wants to be with people, wants to be working even, and she's not able. Now, I suppose at this point, the only things I'm really looking for is how can I resolve these situations? Like, for one thing, that path taken to getting a diagnosis has gone on far too long, and it's gotten us nowhere. And then, for me, like all of the little things I have to do for the family each day add up. I basically have to help my wife with lots of little tasks. I have to do what I can to get the kids taken care of, to and from school if needed. I've actually had to have them walking home recently. Um, Getting them to their therapies. Trying to sometimes take my wife to her doctor appointments because she can't drive herself all the time. Some days the symptoms are even worse to the point where she would be a hazard driving. And that's actually quite frequently. Um, I'm also not certain how I can handle the social aspects. common a common trend that keeps hitting me is on those rare moments where I can get some free time, which is only when the kids are in bed. Which even then, I sometimes have to help the wife with things. But in those rare moments, I try to find ways to get my brain to calm down. Sometimes streaming helps. Other times I try to look for friends to not necessarily talk about this subject with because that doesn't really do as much for me as it might for other people. But at least getting something that, you know, tranquilizes my brain, whether that's conversation, interaction, or something to that effect. Some form of relaxation where I don't feel so burdened by all of the issues that I've been dealing with each day. Something where, at least for a moment, my brain can feel like things are okay. I just don't know. I don't know how to cope that well. My body slowly feels like it's like dying a little more each day, just with trying to do everything I can for the household, but never having enough time, never having enough energy, trying to keep myself from collapsing. A lot of times when the end of the day hits, when I can finally lay down and maybe rest a little bit, I'm too tired to do anything that I would normally do most of the time. Like playing games and streaming it. Sometimes I just lay down, and if I don't find something to occupy my brain, it just falls apart. And a lot of times I will just I'll try to find some way to keep myself calm. Maybe try to find some friends to go to help me take mind off of those things. Take my mind off the hardships and the seeming impossibility of everything. But then when I look at the options, when I look at those friends I could contact, and I could visit and keep, to help keep my brain from going overboard, my mind just instead feels like, oh, just going to end up spreading my own sadness to others. I want to end my own suffering, but I don't want to spread it. I don't know how to. I don't know how to stop my mental anguish consistently. Kind of funny though, when I've looked for resources for how to cope with caregiving, a lot of times when doing those searches, I would keep finding like 99% of the time, or at least 95% of the time, articles talking about, short-term caregiving, like injuries and diseases of some sort, etc. And most of the time find articles mentioning the elderly. Very few would mention caregiving in the context of, younger ages. Very few would mention caregiving in the context of having kids that still needed parental care. Not to mention those that have high needs. So it's like, I feel like whatever resources would be there, whatever resources would be out there and available, are either hiding really well or just not out there. And a lot of times with all the responsibilities I have, I kind of not necessarily joke because it's more or less true, but I say I practically wear every hat in the household because I'm trying to manage everything, taking care of someone's needs, taking care of the kiddos, cleaning the house, which more often than not has to be pushed to the side because of everything else I'm handling. That's depressing in its own right because like having a messy house is actually something that causes my wife anxiety, and I can never seem to get every other task handled in time for decent cleaning, nor have the energy I need. A lot of this just creates a unique and painful mental feeling where, with being unable to find permanent solutions, with being unable to keep up with everything, it just makes me feel like I'm too weak, too insufficient to handle everything. And even like failing to find resources to help us. We don't really have many options in terms of friends or family locally that can help us with anything. At least not with, the ongoing, persistent, constant needs that my family has. So that's basically what I'm going through overall, what my whole family's going through. So, if you or anyone you know knows of any ways I can resolve some of the issues, like resources for figuring out a diagnosis when all the current specialists have been unable to. Resources for dealing with financial hardships or getting the coverage we need, for things like my wife's inability to work or that sort of thing. I would love to hear anything that you have to offer. I will say one thing as a final note: don't. I gotta phrase this delicately. Don't, even though I stream, even though I have lines of options to donate, don't donate in this regard. Even though I mentioned I have a lot of debts, it's not something I see ever permanently going away. Not without some sort of miracle. Because, like I mentioned earlier, my wife likes being outside the house, likes, going places. And one of the reoccurring things has been happening even before the debts got worse, is she would like to go on trips to Michigan, halfway across the country, visit her family. Now, I have nothing against her visiting family. I have nothing against visiting family in general. Heck, she even wants us to visit our own family here in the same state that we live in. But I know that if my finances stabilize to a certain point, that even if we're not fully out of debt, she's going to still want to kick off those trips again, even though we cannot financially handle it. So that's why I have concerns about accepting any monetary donations, because I know I won't have full control over it being spent wisely. I know that even though I wouldn't call it frivolous, like I said, it's nice to visit family. It's just not as critical as all the other things that need to have cleared, and that's the fact that those aren't quite being prioritized as much. by my spouse, I don't dare accept anything because I can't guarantee that it will be utilized properly. Also, I don't want anybody putting themselves in a dire situation either. I know what it feels like. It's even more challenging for me as someone that's generally pretty frugal. It's like the only reason I have a lot of the technology that I have gotten is through judicious saving of gift cards. Being able to spend them on stuff by spending them wisely. Heck, in the case of this headset, I was gifted it very generously by a friend. Actually blew my mind, honestly. So, information more what I need than anything else, as well as help coping. That's about all there is to say. I'm sorry for taking all this time, and sorry I couldn't end it on a positive note, because I do genuinely enjoy spreading, the laughter and the silly times that I sometimes have. I genuinely enjoy streaming because it is one of those moments where I don't have to overthink, going to meet people, or I don't have to overthink trying to find friends to hang out with, or that sort of thing. I don't have to kind of overutilize those mental processes that are otherwise beaten down at the end of a very long, very rough day. Instead, if all goes well, I can typically just do one of my hobbies that I enjoy, playing games. Mix it with another one of my hobbies, being a silly cartoon animal. And actually, enjoy my time by responding to people that are interested in coming to me, are interested in just relaxing, watching, or even lurking and listening to, me enjoying my time on a game, or chatting, or, watching as some really weird random thing happens in a game. Glitches can be funny like that. So, I'll say one thing though: don't, just to end off on some form of positive note. Don't ever despair when life is tough. Because yes, life will be tough. There will always be tough moments. Some people's lives, heck, for me, a lot of those tough moments just keep kind of rolling on a day-to-day basis, where I try to basically, well, I wouldn't say survive, but where I try to keep myself from going crazy. There's always something. There is always something out there. There is always something worth living for. So, even if you don't have the solutions on hand, even if it takes many years, to find those solutions. Even if it feels like those solutions may not come, even if, for all you know, there may not be a solution. Like, for me, I don't know if my wife's challenges are going to last her entire lifetime. They might. Some conditions are chronic. This one appears to be at this rate. Even with all that, there's always something to enjoy. And sometimes it may just be something as simple as, meeting a friend, saying hi, or just, stirring up some imaginations in your brain and, working that into a hobby or, something else. So, thanks for your time. I'll talk to you later.